Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Pranamam to all blessed souls. In the last session, we discussed the meaning of mantra 9, wherein it has been mentioned that avidya leads us to great darkness and vidya leads us to greater darkness. What's been mentioned is that those people who are devoted to avidya will enter an area of darkness. Those people who revel in vidya, they enter greater darkness, an area of greater darkness. It is very difficult to understand the sense of the mantra if we ascribe the normal meanings to these two words, vidya, avidya and vidya. Avidya or ignorance, if we ascribe the normal meaning of ignorance to avidya, the word avidya, then it's understandable. Avidya or ignorance leads to darkness. But the trouble comes in understanding when we listen to the Rishi saying that vidya, those people who revel in vidya, they enter a world of greater darkness, more blinding darkness. There, vidya is the opposite of avidya. Vidya is light. By pursuing the path of vidya, we should be entering a world of light. We should be enlightened by that. But then, the Rishi says, those people who revel in vidya enter an area of darkness, a greater area, an area of greater darkness. We find a reconciliation of this in Sri Shankara-Bhagavatpada's commentary. In his Bhashyam, Sri Shankara-Bhagavatpada says, avidya is action born of ignorance, and vidya is merely devata vishayaka jnanam, a knowledge about the deities who are sought to be propitiated by the action. There we get a reconciliation. In Sri Aurobindo's commentary, also we get a reconciliation, but in a different way. There, Arvinda Rishi says, ignorance or avidya is multiplicity consciousness. Unity consciousness and multiplicity consciousness. Vidya and avidya. Unity consciousness is the fundamental fact. So that is required. That is the basic fact. But then we cannot reject the fact of the multiplicity consciousness also. Brahman is each. He is the controller. He is the Lord. He has the Ishitattva over both vidya and avidya. He has lordship over both knowledge and ignorance. He is the master of both the unity consciousness and multiplicity consciousness. Those people or those entities positioning themselves in point of multiplicity consciousness centers, though they are one and should be identifying themselves with the one, they are one with the one, they take themselves to be separate and develop a separatist attitude, develop an ego, then it becomes difficult. In that context, multiplicity consciousness can lead us to error. It is erroneous to pursue that path. Then that ignorance or that multiplicity consciousness which disregards the fundamental fact of the unity consciousness, that can lead us to blindness. greater will be the area of darkness, the greater will be the darkness of the area that a person who is firmly rooted in unity consciousness, but instead of having an inclusive attitude, he excludes everything else from that. He excludes the multiplicity consciousness possibility of Brahman. Then he enters an area of greater darkness. There also we get a good reconciliation. Let us see what is mentioned in Mantra 10. Mantra 10 goes like this. Anyadevahur vidyaya anyadahu avidyaya iti shushrumadhiranam ye nastad vijachachire anyat eva ahu vidyaya. By knowledge, by vidya, we attain a different result. Anyat ahu avidyaya. We attain or we gain a different result through avidya, ignorance. Iti shushrumadhiranam. So we have heard from those bold, steady pathfinders for us. From them we have heard this. From those people who have ye nastad vijachachire, who have explained to us, explain for us. What? That, tad, vichachachire. They have explained that to us. From those people who have explained that to us, we have heard so. That the result indeed of pursuing the path of knowledge is different. Different indeed is the result of pursuing the path of ignorance. Sri Shankara Bhagavad-pada in his commentary also quotes from other Upanishads like Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and says that Shruti has already, elsewhere also, Shruti has mentioned that those people who pursue the path of Vidya, they attain the world of deities, gods. They ascend there. And Shruti also says, Bhagavad-pada says like this, Shruti also has evidence that those people who indulge in action, they enter the world of the mains, ancestors. They enter the Pitraloka. Those people who pursue the path of Vidya enter Devaloka, whereas those people who pursue the path of ignorance, here Shankara Bhagavad-pada says the path of action. Avidya is path of action. They enter the world of the Pitrus. The difference is that from the Pitraloka, people come back, people who do things with result-orientedness, rather with the idea of appropriating results all for themselves, they come back after expending their punya, their merits. Once the merits are exhausted, they come back. There is a difference between the two paths. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh also harps upon the difference. But then, while Shankara Bhagavad-pada stressed the difference between the path of avidya and the path of vidya, Sri Aurobindo Ghosh stresses the difference between avidya and avidya on one hand and vidya on the other hand. Avidya, mentioned in the 9th stanza, the 9th mantra, will lead us to darkness. But avidya's purpose is not that. Anyat eva, indeed different, is the result of pursuing the path of avidya as mentioned in the ninth stanza, ninth mantra, and the avidya, whose possibility of taking us higher and higher is very great. So between this avidya and that avidya, there is a difference. One avidya is separatist in approach, in attitude, leading to ego. The other vidya is a stepping stone for man to perfect himself. In man's perfection, in man's journey of perfection, that avidya is a springboard. There is a difference between these two kinds of multiplicity consciousness. Between vidya and vidya, also there is a difference. That difference is vidya that is exclusive. Vidya, unity consciousness that excludes the possibility of multiplicity consciousness, and saying that only unity is the truth and that alone is the truth. They exclude the possibility of the multiplicity consciousness. That is only half the side of the story. Unity consciousness should be able to embrace the multiplicity consciousness, because Brahman is Isha of both Vidya and Avidya. He is the master of Vidya Maya and Avidya Maya. Brahman is not bound by either unity consciousness or multiplicity consciousness. That being the case, Vidya cannot afford to keep itself exclusive. Exclusivity there is not a virtue. So, there is a difference between the Vidya that the Rishi has in his mind when he gave us the mantra 9, and the real Vidya, whose purpose is totally different. And we find actually both the acharyas are able to hold on to the views. From mantra 9 to 11, it is one unit. They have been able to rationalize and give the rationality of their thinking from 9 to 11 in an unbroken manner, but in a totally different manner. That is the beauty of the interpretations. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh says that when the Rishi speaks of the difference in mantra 10, it can't be the plain difference between Vidya and Avidya, because the difference between Vidya and Avidya is all too obvious. For the Rishi to give one mantra for that, for the overstatement of one obvious fact, it can't be that. It's difficult to accept it in that manner. Anyat eva, the word eva gives force to the fact of anyat, in the sense that the difference between what had been mentioned, what is really intended by Avidya, and what is unfortunately achieved by Avidya is different. So also Vidya. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh stresses on this kind of a difference. Otherwise, the Rishi would not be with a kind of pomposity declare an ordinary truth as though he is declaring an extraordinary fact. He wouldn't do that. So, the difference is not between Vidya and Avidya, but it is between one kind of Avidya and the other kind of Avidya, and one kind of Vidya and other kind of Vidya. And we will get a greater reconciliation and confirmation of this in mantra 11. That we will see in the next session. Pranamam to all blessed souls.